Gramática. Los pronombres de objeto con el imperativo. So we're going to be taking a look at those commands when they include a direct object or an indirect object pronoun. Remember, same thing in English, right? Often direct and indirect object pronouns are used with commands to direct the action of the verb at someone or something, whatever that pronoun is substituting, right? What is different? The difference is that in English, pronouns are always placed after the verb. Give me the ball. Don't touch them, right? No difference whether the command is positive or negative. Well, in Spanish, object pronoun placement with commands, both with the formal that we have already seen and the informal that we will see in the next unit, depends on whether a command is affirmative or negative. So let's take a look. Depending on the type, right? Positive commands or negative commands. We're going to have a different placement of the pronoun. When we have positive commands, it is going always to be attached at the end of the verb. Here we have an example. Llévenos al parque. Take us to the park. Pruébenlo. Taste it. See? What happens when the commands are negative? Well, the pronoun is going to be placed after no, but before the verb. So in between no and the verb. No nos lleve al parque. Don't take us to the park. No lo prueben. Don't taste it. See? In between no and the verb. Right? And notice that we have an accent mark when we attach the pronoun at the end. We are doing that to maintain the stress of the verb in the same syllable. Okay, so every time you add a pronoun, one pronoun, to the end of a verb, you attach it to the end of a verb with two or more syllables, you're going to add an accent mark if the verb doesn't already have one. Gramática. El orden de los pronombres de objeto directo e indirecto combinados. So what happens when you find both a direct object pronoun and an indirect object pronoun in the same sentence? Remember, that is possible in English as well, right? Well, usually, not always, but most of the time, what we do is that we place the direct object pronoun right after the verb, and then the indirect object pronoun comes after a preposition, either to or for, right? The waiter brings Elena the bill. What happens if we substitute Elena for an indirect object pronoun? The waiter brings it, direct object, to her, indirect object. See? Well, it's different in Spanish as well. Notice that usually the indirect object is going to be placed after the direct object. In Spanish, it works exactly the opposite, okay? The indirect object pronoun comes before the direct object pronoun when both are in the same sentence. In this sentence, we only have, remember, every time we use an indirect object, we have the indirect object pronoun, right? It always accompanies the indirect object. In this sentence, we have la camarera nos trajo el caldo. El caldo would be our direct object. A Juan y a mí, indirect object, right? Notice that in blue are the direct objects and in pink are the indirect objects. What happens if we substitute el caldo for the direct object pronoun lo? La camarera nos lo trajo. Indirect object first, direct object pronoun after the indirect object pronoun. See? Let's take a look. Remember, we had different placements for the pronoun, right? What happens if it comes after an infinitive or a gerund? Vas a pedirme los boletos a mí. So we have our indirect object in pink, our direct object in blue. And we're going to substitute for the pronoun. Vas a pedírmelos. Indirect object first, direct object last. See? Muy bien. Notice again those accent marks, okay? What happens when we place them before the verb, when we have a construction with the infinitive or the gerund? Okay, remember that we could place it either attached at the end or before the verb, the conjugated verb. Same thing, indirect object first, direct object pronoun after the indirect object pronoun. Me los vas a pedir. See? And now we have an example with a reflexive verb. Remember that reflexive pronouns can either be indirect object or direct object pronouns. In this case, we have an indirect object pronoun, and las manos is going to be our direct object. ¿Estás lavándote las manos? So let's substitute las manos for the pronoun las, right? ¿Estás lavándotelas? If we attach them at the end, or te las estás lavando if we place them before the conjugated verb. See? Muy bien. Let's take a look at the positive command. See? Ustedes, sírvanse la comida. You all, right? Get yourselves your own food, okay? Serve yourselves your own food. We're going to substitute la comida. Remember, first we need the right pronoun, la, and now we're going to place the indirect object pronoun before the direct object pronoun. As we just learned, right? With positive commands, the pronoun always goes attached at the end. See? So, sirvan, verbo, se, indirect object pronoun, la, direct object pronoun. Sírvansela. You see, in just one word, right? We have the verb, the indirect object, and the direct object. See? Notice again that accented verb. What happens when we have two pronouns? When we have two pronouns, to maintain the stress of the verb in the same syllable, we always need to add an accent mark. Okay? When you are going to add two pronouns, you're always going to have more than two syllables, so you're always going to need an accent mark, okay, to keep the same stress in the verb. Now, we have one little irregularity, okay? If both pronouns start with the letter L, okay, remember that in some cases, in the third person, we have for both the indirect object and the direct object pronouns that start with L. Then we're going to change the first pronoun, the indirect object pronoun, to se. Okay? So let's take a look at our two examples. Le pedí la cuenta al camarero. You already know that camarero is going to be substituted for le because it's already accompanying el camarero, right? La cuenta, it's going to be substituted for la. So we have le plus la. We're going to have to change it to se la. Se la pedí. And if you had le la pedí, it would be incorrect. It's what in Spanish we call cacophony. Okay, it means that it's a bad sound. Okay, it doesn't sound well. So we change it. Let's take a look at the other example. ¿Les puedes llevar el té a esas mujeres? We already know that the indirect object pronoun for mujeres is les because it's accompanying mujeres in this sentence. And el té is going to be substituted for lo, right? So, les lo, it doesn't sound right. So we're going to change it to se lo. ¿Puedes llevárselo? And same thing every time you have le plus a direct object starting with L. Okay, here you have all the cases that you can find.